Beneath the sands of ancient Mesopotamia lies a secret that could rewrite everything we know about human history. What if the first civilization was not the beginning, but merely one chapter in a much longer forgotten story? 10,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened on Earth that changed humanity forever, and we may have forgotten the true beginning. A monumental temple carved from stone stands alone in the desert, older than civilization itself, asking silent questions about lost societies. Legends of great floods echo through ancient cultures across the world, preserving memories of something real that civilization tried to remember. Beneath forests and oceans lie entire civilizations waiting to be discovered, holding secrets that could reshape our understanding of human origins. Welcome, dear listener, to an exploration of humanity's greatest mystery. We are the Sleepy Historian, and tonight we journey into the depths of ancient time. What time is it where you are? Are you nestled at home, or perhaps traveling through distant lands? Before we begin, I must ask, do you believe that history, as we know it, is the complete story? Join us as we uncover what may have been forgotten beneath the earth for thousands of years. Chapter 1. Before Civilization. The world at the dawn of order. In the depths of geological time, the world lay under the grip of ice. 21,000 years before the present moment, vast sheets of frozen water covered much of the northern hemisphere, their weight compressing the landscape beneath them. Glaciers stretched across Europe and North America like sleeping giants, their presence shaping the very contours of the earth. Then, gradually, something shifted. The climate began to warm. It was not a sudden awakening, but a slow, patient thawing that would unfold over millennia. The great ice sheets retreated northward, their retreat so profound that sea levels rose and transformed the geography of the world. Forests began to reclaim lands that had been barren tundra. Grasslands spread across regions once locked in permafrost. The warming created new possibilities for life. Animals flourished in these transformed landscapes. And humans, those remarkable creatures who had learned to survive in the harshest conditions, found themselves in a world of abundance they had never known. They did not yet understand the magnitude of what was happening. They could not foresee that this warming would eventually lead them to abandon the ways of their ancestors. But in those gradual shifts of climate and ecology, the seeds of transformation were being planted. The Ice Age was ending. A new world was being born. Yet the warming did not arrive evenly or with permanence. Between 12,900 and 11,700 years before present, a reversal occurred. The Younger Dryas, as it came to be called, was a period of abrupt climate reversal that confounded the warming trend. In Greenland, temperatures plummeted as much as 10 degrees Celsius in mere years. In some places, it happened so quickly that the transition completed within a single year or just a few years. To the people living in these times, it must have seemed like the world itself was betraying them. The well-watered regions of the Levant grew drier. The forests that had been spreading became steppe. The abundance of plants and animals that had emerged from the ice began to decline. In the Azraq Basin, in the oasis of El Koum, the settlements that humans had built were abandoned. People returned to the ways of their ancestors, moving again, following the herds, searching for game and wild plants. Yet not all settlements were abandoned. In a few places, Abu Huraira, Jericho, Beda, small communities persisted. They endured through the harshness, clinging to these locations despite the hardship. These persistent settlements would later prove prophetic. They were harbingers of a fundamental shift in how humans would relate to the land. And then, after 1,000 years of rigorous cold, the reversal reversed itself. Around 10,000 years before present, rapid warming returned to the world. This time, the transition was swift. Within 50 years, sometimes within just 1 to 3 years, the climate shifted dramatically toward warmth. The transformation was profound and swift. The steppe became grassland again. Forests returned, and crucially, something else happened. The conditions that made agriculture possible finally emerged. In the Zagros Mountains, increased rainfall fed the headwaters of mighty rivers. In the lands that would become Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, the climate shifted from cool and temperate to something newer pattern of cool, wet winters and hot, dry summers. This Mediterranean climate pattern was unlike anything that had come before, and it brought with it an extraordinary gift: the emergence of grasses and legumes, particularly wild cereals. Einkorn wheat appeared. Emmer wheat appeared. Barley flourished in the warm seasons. These wild grains were more abundant, more reliable, and more calorie-rich than anything humans had exploited before. The larger herbivores followed, drawn to these same grasslands and grain fields. Humans, observing these changes with the intelligence honed over hundreds of thousands of years, began to notice something remarkable. If they remained in these places, if they stayed near these resources, they need not wander. The foundation of a new way of life was being laid. The Natufian culture emerged as the bridge between two worlds. Beginning around 12,500 years before present, in the Levant and surrounding regions, groups of humans began to do something their ancestors had never attempted. They stayed in one place. The Natufians built semi-subterranean stone structures, dwellings that were meant to be used again and again, season after season. These were not temporary shelters, but homes designed to be repaired, expanded, and passed down. Stone foundations were carefully laid. Walls were maintained. Hearths were built inside, creating warm centers for family and community life. The locations chosen for these settlements were not random. They clustered in river valleys and alluvial plains, in the Jordan Valley and the Damascus Basin, always near reliable water sources and flat lands that would one day be suitable for cultivation. Within these early settlements, the Natufians engaged in something novel. They began to deliberately tend wild plants. They harvested wild cereals not by random gathering, but by focused cultivation. They managed the landscape itself, increasing the abundance of the plants they needed. Grinding stones appeared in archaeological records, evidence of processing these grains into flour and food. Sickle blades, their stone edges worn smooth by cutting grain stems, lay among the household debris. The Natufians were not yet farmers, but they were no longer simple foragers. They occupied a threshold, a liminal space between the old way and the new. Around 11,000 years before present, as the climate continued to stabilize, something remarkable began to happen in scattered locations. Humans started to deliberately plant seeds. This was not accidental. It was intentional experimentation. At the site of Abu Huraira, archaeologists found evidence that rye was being deliberately cultivated, possibly around 11,000 to 10,000 years before present. At Murbit, the tilling and cultivating of wild strains of rye and einkorn wheat represented the earliest known domestication of crops. These were not the first successful harvests of wild plants. These were deliberate attempts to control the reproduction of plants, to increase their yields, to make them more abundant and more reliable. The younger dryas had taught a harsh lesson. Nature could not always be trusted. Droughts came. Abundance could vanish. By cultivating plants, by taking an active role in their growth, humans were attempting to reduce uncertainty. They were trying to make the future more predictable. The transition was gradual. For generations, people continued to hunt and gather alongside their experiments with cultivation. The domesticated plants were not yet purely domesticated. They were wild species being tended, encouraged, improved. But with each generation, the knowledge accumulated. With each season of planting and harvesting, the techniques improved. The barrier between wild and domestic was being crossed, not in a single dramatic moment, but across centuries of patient, deliberate effort. As cultivation became more reliable, communities began to gather in larger groups. Pre-agricultural villages emerged, settlements that were not yet entirely dependent on farming, but were substantially larger and more organized than Natufian camps. The earliest of these settlements appeared around 10,000 years before present. Jericho was one such place, a site that had been visited by Natufian hunters for generations, but now was becoming something new, a permanent town, with defensive walls, stone structures, and complex social organization. The wall at Jericho stood as evidence of coordinated labor on a scale previously unknown. Many individuals had to work together, had to be directed toward a common purpose, had to sustain the effort for weeks or months. This required authority. It required communication and planning. It required a degree of social complexity that had not existed in earlier hunter-gatherer bands. Alongside Jericho, other sites emerged. Bedtime in southern Jordan, Göbekli Tepe in Anatolia. At Bedtime, large communal halls served as gathering spaces for the entire community, places where food was prepared, tools were manufactured, and social life unfolded. These buildings were not merely functional. They were symbols. They represented the community itself, the bonds that held people together. The architecture was deliberate, planned, and sophisticated. It revealed minds capable of envisioning a structure before it was built, minds capable of coordination and abstract thought. The domestication of animals followed closely upon the domestication of plants. Around 11,000 to 9,000 years before present, humans began to convert wild animals into dependent companions. Goats were among the first, followed closely by sheep. These animals provided meat, yes, but they also provided something equally valuable: milk, hides, and wool. A single domesticated sheep could serve a household for years, providing resources repeatedly rather than just once. Dogs were also domesticated early, initially used as hunting companions, but gradually becoming members of the household itself. The domestication process was not violent conquest. It was more subtle, a gradual process of selecting animals with certain characteristics and breeding them deliberately. Calmer animals were more likely to thrive in proximity to humans. More docile animals were easier to manage. Over generations, through unconscious and then conscious selection, wild animals were transformed into domestic ones. Their very bodies changed. Their behavior changed. Their relationship with humans fundamentally transformed. In Southeast Asia, chickens were domesticated around 10,000 years before present. Later, as societies grew larger and more complex, humans would domesticate oxen for plowing and horses for transportation. But in these early moments, the domestication of goats and sheep represented a revolutionary shift in how humans related to the animal world. Animals were no longer merely prey. They were becoming part of the human household, integral to the emerging agricultural economy. With reliable food sources came changes to human populations. Between 8,000 and 10,000 years before present, world population grew from approximately 5 million to slightly higher levels. The growth was gradual, perhaps only 0.4 to 0.5% per year. This seems small, but over thousands of years it accumulated. More people could be supported. More people meant more labor. More labor meant more could be accomplished. The ability to support populations not engaged in food production became possible. In earlier hunter-gatherer societies, nearly everyone participated in procuring food. Children, adults, and the elderly all had roles in gathering, hunting, and processing food. But in agricultural societies, surplus production created the possibility of specialization. Some people could focus exclusively on crafting tools. Others could manage religious ceremonies. Others could direct labor and settle disputes. These roles, which appeared initially as response to need, gradually became permanent. They became hereditary. They became the foundation of social class. The first hints of hierarchy emerged. In the archaeological record, burial goods begin to show differentiation. Some individuals were buried with more elaborate grave goods than others. Some burials were more carefully prepared. Some occupied more prominent locations within cemeteries. These differences, subtle at first, would grow more pronounced with each passing century. The egalitarian societies of earlier times were beginning to transform. Social stratification, barely visible at first, was taking root. Pottery emerged during this transformative period, appearing independently across multiple regions as societies settled and needed to store surplus. The oldest known pottery in sub-Saharan Africa appeared by 9,400 years before present in central Mali. In East Asia, in the triangle between Siberia, China, and Japan, pottery developed during the same period. These regions responded to identical climatic changes with the same innovation. Pottery provided durable, waterproof containers that protected harvested grain, nuts, and dried meat from pests and moisture. A single clay vessel could preserve food for months or even years. This capacity for long-term storage was revolutionary. It meant communities could accumulate surplus beyond immediate consumption. They could save for seasons of scarcity. They could build reserves. As pottery technology advanced, the potter's wheel appeared in Mesopotamia between 6,000 and 4,000 years before present. Kilns became more sophisticated, reaching temperatures of 1,050 to 1,200 degrees Celsius. This enabled new uses. Cooking vessels allowed for boiling, expanding dietary possibilities. Specialized containers enabled new food preparation techniques. The very act of pottery production became a craft worthy of specialization. Some individuals became known as potters. They devoted themselves to the art. They refined techniques and passed knowledge to apprentices. Pottery, born from the need for storage, became a foundation for craft specialization and artistic expression. Social structures in these early agricultural communities centered on kinship and family. Extended families formed the basic unit of organization. Multiple families within a kinship group shared resources and labor. Land, initially abundant, was held by the community as a whole or by clans, with marked parcels allocated to small family groups for cultivation. These families pooled their labor during harvest seasons, sharing tools and strength to bring in the crop before weather turned. Marriages were arranged, formalized unions that bound families together and created alliances. Monogamy was the normative pattern, though economic status could influence these arrangements. Gender roles were clearly defined. Men typically engaged in hunting and herding, while women managed cultivation, processing, and household production. Both roles were essential to survival. Both required skill and knowledge accumulated across generations. Leadership emerged gradually. Someone had to settle disputes between families. Someone had to direct the timing of planting and harvest. These individuals, typically male, often older, sometimes shamans or religious figures, accumulated authority, not through coercive power, but through respect and demonstrated wisdom. Ritual institutions developed, ceremonies marking seasons, births, deaths, and community transitions. These rituals bound the community together, creating shared meaning and identity. Religion evolved to explain the natural world and humanity's place within it. Gods of grain and fertility emerged. Ancestors were honored and remembered. These beliefs, visible in burial practices and ritual deposits, revealed a worldview fundamentally different from earlier hunter-gatherers. Humans were no longer simply responding to nature. They were attempting to shape it, to control it, to make it serve their purposes. By approximately 8,000 to 7,500 years before present, the transformation was complete. Agriculture had become the foundation of human life in the Fertile Crescent and other regions of the world. Established agricultural villages now covered the landscape. Jericho had grown into a substantial town. Çatalhöyük in Anatolia contained densely packed mud brick houses built so close together that residents entered through roof openings. Gizal in the Jordan Valley boasted elaborate plastered walls and sculptured human figures. These were no longer experimental settlements. These were functioning agricultural communities with proven systems for planting, harvesting, and storing crops. The surplus from these harvests had enabled the emergence of specialists. Priests conducted ceremonies in increasingly elaborate temples. Craftspeople devoted themselves entirely to production of goods. Warriors protected the community's interests in neighboring lands. And beneath these emerging elites, the majority of people worked the land, generating the surplus that sustained the non-productive classes. This stratification was not yet oppressive, but it was real. The archaeological evidence shows it clearly. Some burials were far more elaborate than others. Some individuals possessed more goods in death than others. The egalitarian societies that had endured for hundreds of thousands of years were gone. In their place rose societies marked by hierarchy, specialization, and permanent occupation. The world was transforming. From these settlements, civilizations would eventually emerge. Cities would be built, writing would be invented, empires would rise and fall. But all of it began here, in these quiet agricultural villages where humans first learned to settle in one place. As humans learned to control their food supply through agriculture, they began to gather in larger groups around fertile lands. This transformation created the foundation for something entirely new. The world's first true civilization would soon emerge from these humble settlements. Chapter 2. Sumer rises. The first civilization emerges in the fertile valleys where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flow. Something extraordinary began to unfold. Around 5,000 years ago, in a region called southern Mesopotamia, the foundations of human civilization took their first deliberate steps. Before Sumer, there were settlements, scattered communities of farmers and herders who had learned to coax crops from the soil. But Sumer would become something fundamentally different. The emergence of the first true cities marked a threshold that humanity would never cross backward. The Ubaid people had arrived in this region around 4500 to 4000 BC, establishing themselves as farmers along the river plains. Their settlements were modest by what would come. Simple villages with temples that pointed toward a spiritual understanding of the world. These early inhabitants developed irrigation systems, learning to direct the unpredictable waters toward their fields. They shaped pottery with careful hands and organized themselves into communities bound by shared labor and common worship. Yet these were not cities. They were foundations waiting. The true transformation would begin in the Uruk period, around 4100 BC, when two neighboring settlements named Unug and Kulaba would gradually merge into something unprecedented. This merger would create a place that would ultimately reshape human civilization itself. The distinction between a settlement and a city, subtle though it may seem, holds profound meaning in the story of human development. To understand what made a city distinct from a mere settlement, one must consider how archaeologists trace the ancient world. A city is not simply a larger gathering of people. It is something far more intricate, a constellation of interlocking characteristics that together create something entirely new. Population alone does not define it. Rather, cities emerged when several elements aligned simultaneously. A dense permanent population living in a concentrated area, specialized workers pursuing crafts, administration, and trade rather than farming alone, a reliable surplus of food that could feed those who did not work the land. Centralized authority organized around monumental structures, systems of infrastructure for water, waste, and movement, and crucially, in some cases, written records that documented transactions and governance. Uruk would come to embody all of these characteristics. It would become a place where tens of thousands of people lived in close proximity, where master craftspeople created fine goods, where administrators managed complex resources, where massive temples rose above the plain, and where scribes first inscribed marks upon clay to record their world. None of these elements alone would create civilization, but together, arranged in harmonious function, they created something the world had never seen before, a true city, a center of human organization and thought that would serve as a model for countless cities to follow across millennia. The Uruk period, spanning from roughly 4100 to 2900 BC, witnessed a transformation so profound that historians mark it as the birth of urban civilization itself. Uruk transformed from two neighboring settlements into the world's first large city through centuries of gradual development. What began as two temple complexes, the Ayana district, devoted to the goddess Inanna, and the Anu district, dedicated to the sky god An, slowly merged into a unified urban core that grew steadily year after year. By around 3000 BC, Uruk had expanded dramatically. Its walls enclosed an area exceeding 2 square miles, encircling buildings, streets, and organized districts. At its peak, sometime around 2820 risen, the city's population reached staggering numbers between 40,000 and 80,000 inhabitants, with some scholars suggesting it may have approached 100,000 souls. This made Uruk, for a time, the largest city in the world. Surrounding villages clustered outside its defensive walls, creating a metropolitan region that influenced the entire Mesopotamian world. This growth was not accident or chaos. It was orchestrated by deliberate choices. The priest kings who ruled Uruk directed the construction of monumental temples. They mobilized labor forces to maintain and expand the irrigation canals that made the region's agriculture remarkably productive. They organized trade networks that brought goods from distant lands. Each decision, each construction project, Each administrative decree pulled more people toward this growing center, creating a gravitational force that drew humanity into urban life. At the heart of Uruk stood the temple, the beating center of urban life. The White Temple of Uruk, with its distinctive buttressed walls and white plastered surface, rose above the city like a beacon. It was not merely a place of prayer. It was the administrative heart, the treasury, the storehouse, and the seat of governance, all united under divine authority. The priest-king who ruled the city stood as intermediary between gods and people, responsible for maintaining the cosmic order that kept the world functioning. Temples in Sumerian cities functioned as integrated economic and administrative centers that orchestrated nearly every aspect of urban life. They accumulated wealth through donations of land and resources from citizens seeking divine favor. They managed vast agricultural estates that generated steady revenue streams. From their treasuries, they provided food distribution to the poor, establishing the world's first welfare systems. They extended loans to merchants and farmers, enabling economic activity to flourish. They operated schools where scribes learned their essential craft. They employed artisans, weavers, and metalworkers, sustaining local crafts and trade networks. The temple was also a place of governance. A council of elders, often including both men and women, convened within the temple complex to settle disputes, manage temple lands, and oversee public works. The priest-king, assisted by this council, directed the distribution of resources, the collection of taxes, and the organization of labor. In this single institution, politics, economics, religion, and social welfare merged into an integrated whole. The temple was Uruk, and Uruk, in many ways, was civilization itself. The prosperity that allowed temples to accumulate such wealth and power rested upon a foundation of controlled water. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers defined Mesopotamian civilization, yet they were unpredictable, sometimes flooding with devastating force, sometimes failing to inundate at all. The Sumerians solved this fundamental challenge through irrigation, a technology that transformed the landscape and made civilization possible. They dug networks of canals that drew water from the rivers, creating channels that distributed water across agricultural fields. They built weirs and dikes to regulate flow. They constructed reservoirs to store water during dry seasons. This was not casual engineering. It required planning, sustained labor, and centralized coordination. Water lifting devices called shaduffs, consisting of long wooden poles balanced on supports, allowed farmers to raise water into higher fields and to remove accumulated silt from canals. A single shaduf could lift approximately 2,500 liters of water daily, a modest amount by modern standards, yet transformative for ancient agriculture. The maintenance of these systems was systematic and ongoing. Canals required regular dredging to remove silt. Embankments needed periodic inspection and repair. Reservoir levels were carefully monitored. Salt accumulation in the soil, a natural consequence of repeated irrigation and evaporation, required managing through careful water management strategies. This irrigation infrastructure was perhaps the most important factor in Uruk's rise. It generated the agricultural surplus that fed the growing urban population. It created wealth that funded temples and palaces. It demanded centralized authority to coordinate labor and maintain systems. The control of water meant the control of civilization itself. The surplus that irrigation made possible created a profound social transformation. When farmers could produce more grain than their families required, those surplus stores became resources to redistribute. This redistribution required administrators, people whose role was not to farm but to manage. Uruk thus developed a class of specialized workers who performed functions essential to civilization but disconnected from food production. Scribes learned to mark clay tablets with wedge-shaped impressions, creating records of grain distribution, labor, and transactions. Metal workers shaped copper, bronze, and precious metals into tools, weapons, and ornaments. Merchants organized trade networks. Soldiers maintained order and defended territory. Priests performed rituals. Administrators oversaw projects. This occupational specialization was revolutionary. In earlier settlements, nearly everyone farmed because survival depended on food production. But in Uruk, perhaps 30% or more of the population engaged in specialized work. These specialized workers did not grow their own food. They received grain rations distributed by temple administrators. This system of redistribution held society together. It was not voluntary charity, but organized necessity. The laborer depended on the administrator's grain rations. The administrator depended on the laborer's work. The priest-king depended on both to maintain order and generate surplus. A complex web of mutual obligation bound society together. Yet this system also created inequality. Administrators and craftspeople received larger grain rations than common laborers. Priests and nobility accumulated wealth and land. Slavery emerged as an institution, with captives from warfare and debtors serving in bondage. Social stratification hardened into visible classes, with clear boundaries between elite and commoner, free and enslaved. Around 3200 BC, something extraordinary appeared in Uruk marks impressed into soft clay. These were not art. They were not decoration. They were writing. Humanity's first deliberate attempt to preserve thought and communication beyond the reach of human memory. The earliest cuneiform texts were mundane lists of grain distributed to workers, records of livestock delivered to temples, accounts of resources moved between storage facilities. Yet in these humble accounting records lay a revolution. Writing did not appear suddenly, fully formed. It evolved through stages. Long before cuneiform, the Sumerians used small clay tokens of different shapes to represent quantities of goods, small cones for grain, small spheres for livestock, and so forth. These tokens were used for thousands of years, passed hand to hand, held in agreements, accumulated in jars as records. Around 3500 BC, someone had a profound insight. Why not make two-dimensional impressions of these tokens on clay, rather than storing three-dimensional tokens themselves? From this practical innovation emerged pictographic writing, simplified drawings of tokens, grain, animals, and tools impressed into clay. These pictographs gradually became more abstract. Symbols that originally represented things began to represent the sounds of words, then the sounds of syllables. By around 2800 BC, phonetic elements had been introduced alongside pictographs, allowing writing to express not just concrete objects but abstract ideas, personal names, and the nuances of human language. What began as an accounting tool had become a system capable of recording poetry, laws, and religious texts. Writing transformed administration, documentation, governance, and the very preservation of human knowledge itself. The invention of writing transformed administration itself. The invention of writing transformed administration itself. Before writing, information existed only in human memory. A man might remember a debt owed to him, but when he died, his memory died with him. A temple administrator might recall which fields had been allocated to which families, but disputes arose from conflicting recollections. Writing changed everything. A contract could be inscribed on clay and kept as permanent evidence. A census could be recorded. Tax assessments could be documented and consulted years later. Laws could be written down and applied consistently across a city's territory. This created the first bureaucracy's permanent administrative structures, staffed by trained scribes whose job was to maintain records, communicate decisions, and preserve institutional memory. Scribes became essential officials, their role extending beyond mere accounting to encompass governance, law, divination, and literary culture. They established schools called tablet houses where young scribes learned their craft, spending years copying texts, learning calculation, and mastering the increasingly complex symbol system. These schools functioned as repositories of knowledge, places where information accumulated and was transmitted across generations. Writing also transformed the relationship between ruler and ruled. With written laws, citizens could know what the state expected of them. Written contracts provided evidence of agreements. Written records of tax assessments reduced arbitrary demands. This did not create democracy or equality. Mesopotamia would never know those, but it created transparency where there had been opacity, predictability where there had been uncertainty. A citizen might not like a written law, but at least the law was public knowledge. The development of writing, born from the practical need to count and record, had become the foundation of governance itself. Uruk was not alone. Other cities emerged across Mesopotamia, each developing its own character while participating in a shared civilization. Eridu, to the south, was possibly the oldest city, its origins tracing back into the earliest periods of settlement. Nippur rose as a great religious center, home to the temple of Enlil, god of air and earth. Lagash became a powerful city-state with aggressive military ambitions. Kish dominated the northern plains. Grew wealthy through trade, controlling routes that brought lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, copper from Anatolia, and exotic goods from the Indus Valley. These cities shared fundamental characteristics. Each was enclosed by massive defensive walls, some measuring up to 60 feet thick, with gates that controlled movement in and out. Within the walls lay organized districts. The sacred precinct with its towering ziggurat temple. Residential neighborhoods where mud brick houses clustered around courtyards. Marketplaces where merchants displayed goods, and workshop areas where craftspeople practiced their trades. Water systems included both for irrigation and for daily life. Streets, some planned in grids and others following organic patterns, connected different districts. Each city maintained its own patron deity, believed to physically dwell in the city's principal temple. Yet these cities were not unified. Each city-state functioned as an independent political entity with its own priest-king, its own government, and its own interests. This fragmentation would define Mesopotamian history. Cities competed for control of irrigation waters. They disputed territorial boundaries. They fought over resources and prestige. Despite sharing culture, language, and religious beliefs, the cities of Sumer often found themselves in conflict, each seeking dominance over the others and the resources of the fertile Mesopotamian plain. The cities of Sumer were not isolated from the wider world. Trade networks extended far beyond Mesopotamia, connecting Sumer to distant lands across deserts, mountains, and seas. These trade routes carried not merely goods but ideas, technologies, and cultural influences. Sumerian merchants and colonists ventured across the Persian Gulf to Dilmun, a crucial entrepot that served as an intermediary for trade with the Indus Valley civilization. From Dilmun came copper, precious carnelian beads, and lapis lazuli that had originated in distant Afghanistan. The Indus Valley itself provided textiles, semi-precious stones, and intricate seals bearing undeciphered writing. From the north came timber. The cedar forests of Lebanon produced wood essential for construction and shipbuilding, a resource Mesopotamia lacked. From Anatolia came copper and obsidian. From Central Asia came tin, essential for making bronze, and additional lapis lazuli. To the west lay Syria, whose cities participated in extensive trade. Egypt sent gold and received Sumerian goods in return. The Arabian Peninsula provided frankincense and myrrh, aromatic resins valued for religious ceremonies and trade. This extensive commerce served crucial functions beyond profit. Sumer's location in a resource-poor region meant survival depended on importing essential materials. But trade also brought luxury goods, the decorative items that displayed wealth and status, the materials used in religious ceremonies, the goods that made urban life possible and pleasurable. More importantly, trade connected Sumer to the wider world. Merchants carried Sumerian ideas, writing systems, religious beliefs, and cultural practices to neighboring peoples. The ziggurats and city-states of Mesopotamia became models others attempted to replicate. Sumer's innovations: irrigation, writing, organized cities spread outward, fundamentally influencing the development of civilizations across Asia and Africa. The emergence of Sumer between 4100 and 2900 BC represented a threshold in human development that could never be recrossed. For millions of years, humanity had lived in small bands, moving with seasonal changes and dependent on hunting and gathering. Agriculture had changed this, anchoring people to the land and allowing populations to grow. But Sumer created something unprecedented: concentrated settlements of tens of thousands of people organized under centralized authority, performing specialized functions, maintaining written records, and commanding resources across vast distances. It was the first civilization, the model against which all subsequent civilizations would be measured. Yet as we trace the emergence of Sumer, a profound question shadows our certainty. How did civilization appear so suddenly and completely formed? The answer may lie far deeper in time than historians once believed. The development from settlement to city, from oral tradition to writing, from scattered villages to organized states. These transformations occurred over centuries, gradual and incremental. Yet observers living through these changes, the shift from the world of their parents to the world they inhabited, must have felt extraordinary, like the emergence of something entirely new. In truth, civilization did not appear suddenly. It emerged slowly, accumulated from countless individual decisions and innovations, building upon the agricultural foundation that came before. What the people of Uruk created was not a single invention, but a new way of organizing human society itself. A way that would prove so powerful and compelling that within 1,000 years, the vast majority of humanity would abandon the ancient patterns of nomadic and village life to embrace the urban civilization that Sumer had pioneered. Chapter 3: The Mystery of Göbekli Tepe. Something older than everything in the rolling landscape of southeastern Turkey, where the Euphrates winds through ancient hills, there exists a place that defies everything once believed about human civilization. The story of its discovery begins not with grand expeditions or famous archaeologists, but with a quiet afternoon and a simple question. In October of 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt stood on a limestone plateau in a region known as Göbekli Tepe. He had come to this place after hearing of curious stone structures from local villagers. A farmer named Mummeltjeld, whose family owned the land, guided Schmidt to the hilltop. As Schmidt examined the scattered stone slabs protruding from the earth, a realization began to form in his mind. These were not grave markers, as earlier surveyors had assumed. They were something far older and far more extraordinary. The tops of massive stone pillars, he realized, lay buried beneath the soil. Schmidt's experience excavating nearby Nivaliskori had prepared him to recognize what others had overlooked. This was the moment when one of humanity's greatest archaeological mysteries began to awaken from its long slumber beneath the earth. What Klaus Schmidt uncovered beginning in 1995 would fundamentally transform archaeological understanding. The site he excavated revealed not a single monument, but an entire complex of massive circular structures built by people who had not yet invented agriculture. Over 20 enclosures emerged from the earth, each a perfect circle measuring between 10 and 30 meters across. Within each enclosure stood pairs of towering T-shaped limestone pillars, some reaching heights of 6 meters and weighing as much as 10 tons. The limestone had been quarried from bedrock approximately 100 meters away, then shaped using only flint tools. The precision and scale of this construction seemed impossible for a hunter-gatherer society. These pillars were not merely structural, they were ceremonial. Every surface bore intricate carvings depicting wild animals in elaborate detail. Lions prowled across the stone, boars charged with aggressive posture. Foxes and gazelles graced the surfaces alongside snakes, scorpions, and birds. The most haunting images were the humanoid figures, some appearing as headless bodies with arms carved in low relief, their horizontal tops suggesting shoulders or divine presence. The pillars themselves seemed to embody something sacred and incomprehensible. The age of Göbekli Tepe emerged through careful scientific analysis. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials from the site, charcoal from backfill layers, soil samples, burnt animal bone, and lime mortar that bound the pillars painted a consistent chronological picture. The earliest structures dated to approximately 9,500 to 9,000 years before the present era. This placed Göbekli Tepe in the pre-pottery Neolithic period, when humans still hunted wild game and gathered plants without farming. The radiocarbon measurements carried laboratory precision of 30 to 60 years. Yet the calibration curve, that mathematical tool converting raw measurements into calendar dates, introduced broader uncertainty. Individual samples might calibrate to ranges spanning several hundred years. Nevertheless, the convergence of multiple dates from different locations within the site created a reliable framework. The earliest circular enclosures existed around 9500 BCE. The site experienced expansion during the 9th millennium, and occupation continued until approximately 8000 BCE. For context, this meant Göbekli Tepe predated the earliest Sumerian cities by 4,000 to 4,500 years. The Great Pyramids of Egypt would not exist for another 70 centuries. Stonehenge remained a distant future dream, yet here, in this remote corner of Upper Mesopotamia, people had already begun to dream in stone. The precision of Göbekli Tepe's architecture revealed a society far more sophisticated than historians had imagined. The enclosures were not haphazard constructions, but geometrically planned spaces with remarkable accuracy. Each circular structure contained approximately 8 pillars arranged with mathematical precision around the perimeter. 2 taller central pillars stood at opposite sides of the circle, creating a sacred focal point. Floors were constructed either from carefully prepared burnt lime or left as exposed bedrock, their selection seemingly deliberate. The quarrying itself demonstrated extraordinary skill. Workers identified natural limestone strata, approximately 1 meter thick, separated by natural faults. Rather than excavating deep quarries, They exploited the plateau's banks, cutting channels around desired blocks using flint picks and wooden tools. Partially extracted pillars, some nearly complete but abandoned in the quarry, testified to the technical knowledge these ancient people possessed. Once separated from the bedrock, the massive stones had to be transported 100 meters or more to the construction site. Modern experimental archaeology suggests this required water lubrication, wooden sledges, and perhaps 10 to 30 workers coordinating their efforts. The fact that they accomplished this repeatedly, creating enclosure after enclosure, speaks to remarkable organizational capacity. Something drove these people to invest staggering resources into structures that serve no obvious practical purpose. The carvings adorning these ancient pillars tell stories the words have long since vanished to explain. Lions appear frequently, often in aggressive postures that speak of danger and power. Bulls charge across the stone with horns lowered and muscles tensed. Foxes, snakes, scorpions, and mysterious arachnids populate the carved surfaces. Birds, particularly vultures, perch amid the animal menagerie, their wings spread wide. The gazelles and mouflons, wild ancestors of domesticated sheep, leap and bound in perpetual motion. Some pillars feature abstract symbols, enigmatic pictograms that remain largely incomprehensible to modern minds. These abstract marks appear deliberately crafted, suggesting symbolic significance understood within the community, but now lost to time. The humanoid representations are perhaps most intriguing. Some pillars appear to represent stylized human bodies, with the horizontal T-shaped cap serving as a head or shoulders, and the vertical shaft as a torso. Arms are carved in relief on some examples. Certain pillars display what appear to be loincloths or belts carved around their lower portions, suggesting these might represent clothed figures or deities. Klaus Schmidt theorized they could represent ancestors, gods, or supernatural beings, perhaps protective spirits or sources of spiritual power. The sheer diversity and repetition of these images suggests animals held profound symbolic meaning in the worldview of those who carved them. The question of who built Göbekli Tepe yields a complex answer. They were not agricultural farmers, despite earlier theories proposing that. They were not yet civilized in any conventional sense. Instead, they represented an intermediate state of human society, mobile hunter-gatherers, who had begun to settle seasonally and whose relationship with plant cultivation was evolving in ways not yet fully understood. Recent excavations have revealed morphologically domesticated cereals at the site, suggesting these people practiced early forms of cultivation alongside hunting and gathering. Archaeological evidence paints a picture of remarkable social sophistication. The builders possessed no metal tools, no beasts of burden for transport, no wheeled vehicles. Yet they coordinated complex labor projects that required dozens or perhaps hundreds of people working together over extended periods. The scale of the undertaking speaks to extraordinary cooperation and shared purpose. Traditional archaeological thinking held that such cooperation only emerged after agricultural settlement made permanent communities possible. Göbekli Tepe fundamentally challenges this assumption. These people lived lives that oscillated between mobility and settlement. They returned to this plateau seasonally for purposes that seem primarily ritual and ceremonial in nature. The construction project itself may have served as a binding force, creating social cohesion through shared monumental effort. Something in their belief system or social structure compelled them to invest massive resources into permanence, into monuments that would endure long after they themselves had turned to dust. The practical activities that occurred at Göbekli Tepe reveal a society engaged in far more than ceremony. Archaeological investigation uncovered thousands of flint tools and flint working debris, indicating intensive tool production at the site. Grinding stones, mortars, and pestles lay scattered across the excavation, telling of substantial grain processing activities. Chemical analysis of large stone vessels identified oxalate residues, suggesting the possible production of fermented beverages such as beer, likely connected to communal feasting events that accompanied the rituals. Bone remains documented the hunting of gazelle during specific seasons, particularly midsummer and autumn, suggesting that seasonal occupation patterns followed game migration and plant ripening. The diverse animal remains and plant materials indicated a mixed subsistence strategy, neither purely hunting nor purely gathering, but something in transition. Fire pits provided evidence of cooking and warmth, yet notably absent were the structures typical of permanent villages. No substantial houses, no storage facilities, no continuous domestic layers in the earliest phases. This absence suggests the people came seasonally to Göbekli Tepe for purposes that required gathering, but not permanent, year-round habitation. Later deposits, however, contained more abundant domestic debris, indicating that over time, the pattern may have shifted toward more settled occupation. The site may have begun as a purely ritual gathering place and gradually evolved into something approaching a village community. The labor requirements for constructing Göbekli Tepe have generated considerable scholarly debate. Klaus Schmidt, the site's primary excavator, argued that moving individual pillars must have demanded hundreds of workers. He cited comparative examples from Easter Island, where legend suggested 50 to 75 people per week would be required to transport a statue similar in scale to a Göbekli Tepe pillar across 15 kilometers. He also referenced historical accounts from Indonesia, where 525 people participated in moving a single megalith. Yet experimental archaeology suggests different conclusions. Modern researchers who have attempted to move pillars using period-appropriate techniques, water lubrication, wooden sledges, leverage systems, and human-powered ropes found that as few as 7 to 14 people could move individual pillars across short distances. This would represent a single extended family or small village working together. The most plausible reconstruction suggests a labor force of 10 to 30 individuals conducted the construction. However, this interpretation assumes work on individual enclosures rather than the entire site. The sequential construction of multiple enclosures over centuries might have required only modest labor forces working over extended timeframes. What becomes clear is that Göbekli Tepe's construction was feasible for a motivated society with seasonal gathering capacity and strong social cohesion. Whether that involved 10 workers or hundreds, the endeavor required commitment to shared purpose that transcended mere survival. The question of whether Göbekli Tepe's builders were permanent residents or visiting hunter-gatherers has generated considerable scholarly discussion. The earliest evidence points toward periodic occupation rather than year-round habitation. The absence of substantial domestic architecture in the earliest construction phases, no houses, no storage pits, no continuous household debris, suggests the people who built the monumental structures did not establish permanent villages. Instead, they appear to have converged on the site seasonally, perhaps gathering from a catchment area spanning 200 kilometers or more. They came for purposes that seemed centered on the monumental enclosures themselves. They hunted gazelle during specific seasons. They processed grains using the grinding implements found throughout the site. They consumed food and produced craft items. But the act of construction itself, the repeated building and rebuilding of the stone circles, seems to have held central importance. Evidence shows that pillars were periodically buried, replaced with new stones arranged in concentric rings. In enclosure C, barely one pillar in the inner ring remains in its original position, indicating the structures were repeatedly reorganized rather than maintained as complete works. This suggests construction held ritual significance independent of functional utility. Over time, however, evidence from deeper deposits reveals middens, fireplaces, and domestic refuse, indicating that eventually more settled occupation may have developed. The site appears to have evolved from a purely ceremonial gathering center towards something approaching a village community. The abandonment of Göbekli Tepe marked a mysterious transition in human history. Around 8200 to 8000 BCE, after centuries of use and construction, the site was deliberately abandoned. The evidence suggests this was not gradual decline, but intentional closure. The structures were backfilled with earth, the location left to rest. Archaeological investigation has uncovered scattered human bones mixed with the backfill material, adding to the mystery surrounding this abandonment. Sporadic visits by later groups occurred, but no permanent reoccupation followed. The timing of this abandonment coincides with the emergence of agriculture throughout the broader region. Nearby sites such as Navali show evidence of domesticated grains beginning around 8400 BCE. Yet the inhabitants of Göbekli Tepe did not adopt this agricultural lifestyle. They appear to have abandoned the site entirely, as their hunter-gatherer tradition could not withstand the shifting cultural and economic changes reshaping Upper Mesopotamia. Perhaps the ritual power that drew people to this remote plateau lost its hold when agricultural settlement began offering alternative sources of social cohesion. Or perhaps the specialized hunter-gatherer economy that supported the site's seasonal gatherings became untenable as populations shifted to farming villages. Rather than being the catalyst for the Neolithic revolution, Göbekli Tepe may represent the final monumental expression of a hunter-gatherer culture, a brilliant flowering that ultimately could not survive the transformation sweeping the world. Göbekli Tepe emerged from the earth bearing profound implications for understanding human civilization. For centuries, scholars believed agriculture was the prerequisite for civilization. Farming enabled permanent settlement, which allowed social stratification, labor specialization, and monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe inverted this assumption entirely. Here stood architectural sophistication and monumental ambition created by people who had not yet domesticated crops or animals. The site demonstrated that religious motivation, ceremonial purpose, and shared ideology could drive social complexity independent of agricultural settlement. It showed that cooperation on an unprecedented scale could emerge among hunter-gatherers united by ritual belief rather than farming necessity. It proved that humans could envision permanence, could dream of monuments outlasting their own lifespans, centuries before civilization as historians had defined it came into being. The site revealed that monumentality and ritual complexity existed long before civilization. That complexity did not flow inevitably from agriculture, but could emerge from purely ceremonial and spiritual motivations. Yet Göbekli Tepe also posed deeper questions. If such wonders were created in these ancient times, might countless others have vanished entirely, buried beneath the earth and lost to time? How many other Göbekli Tepes existed, yet remained undiscovered, their mysteries still sleeping in the ground? The site invited wonder at what else humanity's distant past contained. What other impossible achievements might lie waiting in darkness? What other civilizations or traditions existed and dissolved, leaving only scattered hints for those patient enough to listen to what the earth might still reveal? Chapter 4. Beneath the Earth. Lost Cities and Buried Civilizations. Beneath the surface of our world lies a vast archive of forgotten cities and civilizations. preserved in layers of earth and time. For centuries, archaeologists have relied on traditional methods to uncover these hidden worlds: patient excavation, careful documentation, and an intimate knowledge of the land. Yet the sheer scale of human habitation across millennia has always exceeded what manual exploration could reveal. Entire cities remained invisible beneath dense forests, buried under centuries of soil accumulation, their very existence unknown to the modern world. The landscape itself kept secrets, and those secrets demanded new tools to unlock them. In recent decades, a revolutionary technology has begun to transform the way archaeologists see the world beneath their feet. This technology, called LiDAR, uses laser pulses to pierce through vegetation and soil, creating precise three-dimensional maps of buried features. What was once hidden is now becoming visible. Forests that concealed ancient settlements for hundreds of years are now becoming transparent to the archaeologist's eye. The implications are staggering. Where archaeologists once conducted surveys that might take years to map a single valley, LiDAR can scan up to 1,000 hectares in a single day, generating millions of data points that reveal structures invisible to the naked eye. This technology has fundamentally altered our understanding of how large ancient civilizations truly were, and how extensively humans had transformed the landscape in ages long past. The technology of LiDAR, short for light detection and ranging, operates on a deceptively simple principle. A laser-equipped device emits rapid pulses of light toward the ground below, then measures the precise time required for each pulse to return. By recording millions of these measurements every second, scientists create an extraordinarily detailed three-dimensional point cloud, a digital representation of everything the laser encounters. These point clouds are then transformed into digital elevation models, maps so refined that they can reveal subtle variations in terrain that would be imperceptible to human observers standing on the ground. What makes LiDAR revolutionary for archaeology is its ability to penetrate obstacles that have hidden the past. Dense vegetation, thick forest canopy, even shallow soil layers become nearly transparent to the laser beam. The technology detects not only obvious structures like walls and buildings, but also subtle features: ancient roads, terraced agricultural fields, ceremonial platforms, and systems of canals. The return signal varies depending on what it strikes. Solid structures create different reflections than vegetation or bare earth. Scientists can analyze these variations to identify archaeological features buried completely out of sight. A structure long hidden beneath 1,000 years of accumulated forest growth suddenly becomes visible on a digital map. The intensity of the returning signal even reveals how buried features affect plant growth patterns above them, allowing archaeologists to identify significant sites through vegetation that has unconsciously marked their locations for centuries. In the years since LiDAR technology became accessible to archaeologists, discoveries have fundamentally reshaped our understanding of ancient civilizations. In 2012, researchers deployed LiDAR over the Purépecha settlement of Angamuco in Mexico. The results proved astounding. The site contained approximately as many buildings as present-day Manhattan, a revelation that transformed scholars' understanding of pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The scale of human organization in ancient times exceeded previous estimates by orders of magnitude. In Guatemala, similar discoveries emerged when archaeologists turned LiDAR instruments toward the Maya Biosphere Reserve. 17 elevated causeways suddenly appeared on maps, connecting the ancient city of El Mirador to distant sites across the jungle. These were not minor pathways, but engineered roads that spoke to sophisticated planning and intercity coordination. Then came 2018, when a comprehensive LiDAR survey of the same region revealed over 60,000 man-made structures across the landscape. 60,000. The number was almost incomprehensible. What had been understood as isolated settlements scattered across wild jungle was now revealed as an interconnected network of cities and towns. In 2023, the discoveries continued. Valeriana, a Maya city in Campeche, Mexico, emerged from the digital maps as the second largest known Maya site, featuring pyramids, athletic courts, and amphitheaters arranged with precise urban planning. These revelations required historians to rewrite entire chapters of pre-Columbian history, acknowledging that ancient societies possessed organizational capabilities previously thought impossible in jungle environments. The discoveries extended far beyond Mesoamerica. In South America, archaeologists turned to the Amazon rainforest, applying LiDAR to regions thought to be pristine wilderness. What they found challenged fundamental assumptions about human presence in tropical environments. In the Ecuadorian Amazon, multiple settlements emerged from the digital scans, revealing that civilizations had thrived in regions scholars had assumed were sparsely populated. These settlements had endured for approximately 1,000 years before being abandoned, leaving behind only the faintest traces visible to the human eye. Further south, in the Llanos de Mojos region of Bolivia, LiDAR revealed two enormous settlements belonging to the Casarabe culture, a civilization that flourished between 500 and 1400 CE. These were not simple villages, but urban centers featuring monumental platform and pyramid architecture, raised causeways connecting what appeared to be suburban settlements, and evidence of extensive water management systems. The Casarabe people had engineered their landscape with remarkable sophistication, creating an urban network that vanished from historical memory 600 years ago. The implications were profound. The Amazon, long romanticized as an untamed wilderness, was revealed to be a landscape shaped by human intention and organization on a scale previously unimagined. Millions of people had lived and built in this environment. Cities had risen and fallen. Civilizations had flourished and disappeared, leaving behind only the subtle topography that LiDAR could now perceive. The forest had reclaimed what humans had built, but the archaeological signature remained, waiting for technology to make it visible again. Yet these contemporary discoveries reveal only a fraction of what lies beneath the earth. To understand the true scale of human civilization across time, one must journey backward to the very foundations of organized settlement. Çatalhöyük, located in what is now Turkey, near ancient Mount Hasan, stands as one of humanity's earliest experiments in concentrated urban living. Occupied from approximately 7,500 BCE to 5,600 BCE, this settlement flourished roughly 9,000 years ago. Houses at Çatalhöyük were constructed of mud brick, densely packed side by side without streets between them. Access occurred through rooftops and doors that opened onto the upper surfaces of neighboring dwellings. The inhabitants numbered somewhere between 600 and 800 people during the settlement's flourishing period, making it a substantial community for its age. What is remarkable about Çatalhöyük is not merely its size, but what it reveals about social organization. Archaeology reveals no signs of hierarchy, no evidence of royal residences or elite architecture. Genetic studies show no distinction between men and women in terms of nutrition or social status. The settlement appears to have been fundamentally egalitarian, with social organization based on kinship rather than dominance. Yet it was complex. Elaborate wall paintings adorn the interiors of dwellings. Stamp seals with geometric patterns and animal depictions suggest ritual and symbolic life. The arrangement of burials beneath house floors followed careful conventions, indicating shared beliefs and communal practices. Çatalhöyük, demonstrates that people could organize themselves into dense settlements and maintain complex cultural practices without requiring centralized authority or hierarchical leadership. Moving forward through time and geography, Jericho presents a different narrative of ancient settlement. This site, nestled in the Jordan Valley, contains approximately 40 distinct occupational layers, spanning from approximately 10,000 BCE through 500 BCE, 10,000 years of human presence, compressed into vertical stratigraphy. Yet the story told by these layers is not one of continuous habitation. Instead, Jericho's history reveals cycles of settlement and abandonment. After the sophisticated farming communities of the pre-pottery Neolithic period, the site experienced a dramatic transformation. Approximately 1,200 years of abandonment followed, during which the landscape remained nearly empty of human presence. When settlement resumed, the new inhabitants lived differently as pastoralists in simple ground-level dwellings rather than the complex farming villages of their predecessors. The causes of such dramatic shifts remain partly mysterious. Environmental crises may have disrupted the water sources that earlier inhabitants depended upon. Climate fluctuations could have made the landscape less hospitable to agriculture. Social and political upheavals may have driven populations elsewhere. Whatever the causes, Jericho's stratigraphy reveals that ancient settlement was far less stable than modern civilization has become. Cities rose and fell. Populations moved and reorganized. The earth itself preserved these cycles in its layered deposits, each stratum marking a moment when humans chose to inhabit or abandon a place. In southern Mesopotamia, a different pattern emerges in the archaeological record. The Ubaidite settlements, flourishing between 5300 and 4700 BCE, represent a crucial threshold in human civilization. These were not the first settlements in Mesopotamia, but they mark a transition toward greater complexity and organization. Ubaid communities practiced intensive agriculture, cultivating barley, wheat, lentils, and flax in the unpredictable alluvial plains. They domesticated cattle for both food and agricultural labor, using these animals to plow fields in ways that fundamentally increased productivity. The settlements featured planned layouts with recognizable streets, mud brick architecture of substantial construction, and communal buildings that resembled early temples. These structures required coordinated effort to build and maintain, suggesting some form of organizing authority beyond the individual household. Archaeological surveys reveal evidence of long-distance trade, obsidian from distant volcanic regions, marine shells from coastal areas, and exotic stone materials appear in Ubaid contexts. Such materials could not have arrived through chance encounters, but rather through deliberate exchange networks connecting settlements across hundreds of kilometers. Large storage facilities within settlements indicate that farmers produced surplus crops beyond immediate subsistence needs. This surplus could be stored, distributed, and exchanged. Differentiated residential areas and accumulations of prestige goods suggest that wealth was accumulating in certain households, creating the first visible evidence of social stratification. Ubaid settlements provide direct archaeological testimony to the emergence of the social, economic, and political complexity that would eventually crystallize into the first city-states. The story of buried civilizations must also account for the landscapes that have vanished forever beneath modern seas. During the last glacial maximum, approximately 20,000 years ago, sea levels were lower by 100 to 120 meters. Vast continental shelves that now lie submerged beneath the ocean were dry land. The exposed shelf area comprised approximately 10 million square kilometers globally, an area nearly the size of the United States. The global coastline extended approximately 1.5 million kilometers further than it does today. effectively doubling or tripling the length of shorelines available for human habitation. These submerged continental shelves represented prime real estate for ancient peoples. The edges of continental shelves, where deeper ocean waters meet shallow waters, produce extraordinarily rich ecosystems. Fish concentrate in these zones. Marine mammals gather to feed. Shellfish beds flourish. For people pursuing maritime adaptation, continental shelf edges represented an abundant resource zone. Evidence of these ancient coastal settlements exists, preserved in unexpected places. Underwater surveys of the coasts of Israel have revealed Neolithic villages, including Atlit Yam, dated to approximately 9,200 years ago. These settlements contain not scattered artifacts but thick cultural deposits, 2 to 3.5 meters of accumulated occupation layers filled with pottery, building remains, and preserved organic materials. Such substantial deposits could only accumulate on dry land, not on water platforms or pilings. They testify to settlements that thrived on landscapes now submerged, civilizations that disappeared when the warming climate caused glaciers to melt and oceans to rise. The mechanisms that bury and preserve archaeological sites operate continuously across the landscape. Water and wind deposit sediments through floods and storm events, laying down layers that accumulate gradually over centuries. Floodplain silts can bury entire occupation surfaces within seasons during extreme events. Sand dunes migrate across valleys, engulfing structures beneath extensive sand deposits. Freezing and thawing cycles in cold climates cause soil to heave and shift, moving artifacts vertically while simultaneously preserving them in place. Biological processes contribute equally to site formation. Plant roots penetrate soil and displace objects, but they also create conditions that slow decomposition. Animal burrowing mixes soil profiles, sometimes creating features that resemble archaeological structures but lack cultural origin. Over time, these processes transform a living settlement into a buried archive, a stratified sequence of layers, each representing a moment in time. The depth of archaeological deposits varies tremendously. Shallow deposits may measure centimeters, while deep stratigraphic sequences in tells and mound sites extend 5 to 10 meters. In cave deposits and riverbank sites with continuous sedimentation across millennia, deposits can reach 20 meters or more. Dating these deposits requires both relative and absolute chronological methods. Relative dating uses the principle that deeper layers are generally older than overlying layers. Absolute dating employs radiocarbon measurements of organic decay, tree ring analysis from preserved wood, and archaeomagnetic dating of heated clay. Through these methods, archaeologists construct chronological frameworks that situate buried deposits within absolute time. Contemporary remote sensing technologies have expanded archaeologists' vision far beyond LiDAR. Ground-penetrating radar transmits radio pulses into soil and records reflected signals, creating three-dimensional subsurface maps without excavation. Interferometric synthetic aperture radar detects millimeter-scale surface deformations from space, allowing monitoring of archaeological sites threatened by groundwater extraction or subsidence. Satellite imagery in the short-wave infrared spectrum penetrates vegetation more effectively than visible light, revealing ancient agricultural terraces and settlement patterns, invisible in conventional photographs. Unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with advanced cameras and photogrammetry capabilities provide detailed aerial maps and digital models of sites in terrain too difficult or dangerous for ground teams. Magnetic and electrical resistivity instruments detect variations in the Earth's properties caused by buried features like hearths, walls, and ditches. These complementary technologies create a comprehensive toolkit for archaeological discovery. Yet despite these remarkable advances, Systematic archaeological surveys have covered only approximately 1% of Earth's land area. Vast regions remain virtually unexplored. Deep cave systems conceal Paleolithic wall paintings and ancient burials. Antarctic ice covers countless mysteries beneath its frozen surface. The deep ocean floor holds submerged settlements on continental shelves. Madagascar's sharp karst forests, accessible only with climbing equipment, likely preserve ancient rock art and cultural layers. Each unexplored region potentially harbors discoveries that could reshape understanding of human history. The archaeological record remains fundamentally incomplete, shaped not by the completeness of the past, but by the fragmentary nature of what survives and what has been found. The earth beneath our feet harbors countless narratives waiting to be discovered. Some civilizations vanished beneath advancing seas, their settlements now resting on continental shelves where ancient peoples once hunted and gathered. Others were buried by the relentless processes of nature's sediment accumulation, volcanic eruption, erosion, and the gradual transformation of landscapes by climate and time. Still others were abandoned by choice or necessity, their populations dispersing to distant regions as resources declined or social structures fractured. What these buried civilizations share is their fundamental humanity. Whether they organized themselves as egalitarian communities like Çatalhöyük or developed hierarchical societies like the Ubaid settlements, these ancient peoples created art, maintained rituals, cultivated relationships, and built structures intended to last beyond their individual lifespans. They made choices about how to organize themselves, how to produce food, how to trade with distant neighbors. They faced environmental challenges and adapted their practices in response. They loved and mourned, celebrated and suffered. The archaeological record preserves fragments of these lives: pottery vessels, stone tools, architectural remains, burial practices, written records. As technology reveals more of what lies beneath the surface, and as archaeologists uncover settlements previously hidden by forest and time, our understanding of human history becomes richer and more nuanced. The discoveries emerging from LiDAR surveys, underwater archaeology, and other advanced methods demonstrate that ancient civilizations were far more extensive, sophisticated, and complex than previous generations of scholars had imagined. Yet these revelations barely scratch the surface of what remains unknown. For every settlement discovered, countless others remain hidden beneath vegetation, sediment, or sea. The work of archaeological discovery is far from complete. As we peer deeper into Earth's hidden layers, we find not only lost cities, but also ancient stories preserved in the form of myths and legends that traveled through generations. Chapter 5. The Flood Myths, when legend preserves memory. In the beginning of human memory, long before written history took its permanent form, civilizations around the world spoke of water. They spoke of a time when the earth itself was consumed by a deluge, when the old world was washed away and a new one emerged from the receding waves. These were not merely stories told in darkness around fires. They were testimonies to something profound, something that touched the deepest parts of the human experience. Across vast distances, separated by mountains and seas, cultures that could never have communicated with one another carried similar tales. The Sumerians whispered of a great flood that divided the ages of mankind. In Egypt, different yet significant water narratives flowed through mythological consciousness. In Greece, gods sent torrential waters as judgment upon the earth. In India, a divine avatar took the form of a fish to warn of catastrophe. In China, heavens themselves were torn open and required divine repair. In Mesoamerica, Creation cycles turned upon destructive floods that reset the world, and among countless indigenous peoples scattered across every continent, the memory of overwhelming water persisted. Why, one might wonder, in the quiet hours before sleep, would such similar stories arise in such different places? What universal truth did these narratives attempt to preserve? What collective memory might they harbor? The answer lies not in a single moment, but in the patient accumulation of human experience with the most devastating natural force known to ancient civilization, water itself. The oldest written accounts of a great deluge emerge from ancient Mesopotamia, that fertile crescent where civilization first learned to write. The Sumerian king list, a document of profound historical importance, tells of a time when kingship itself descended from heaven. In the beginning, it recounts, 8 kings ruled over 5 cities with reigns that stretched across unimaginable spans of time, some ruling for tens of thousands of years. These antediluvian rulers presided over Eridu, Bat Tibira, Larak, Sippar, and Shuruppak, their kingdoms passing like shadows from one city to another across the ages. Then, with sudden and absolute finality, the text declares, "Then the flood swept over." This single sentence marks a watershed in human memory, dividing the world into before and after. The rains that followed flood contracted dramatically, as though something fundamental about human existence itself had changed. Kings who once ruled for millennia now held power for mere centuries or decades. The document itself seems to bear witness to a rupture in the human condition, recorded in the patient cuneiform marks upon clay. This is not merely mythology. It is how the ancients themselves attempted to make sense of a transformation they felt certain had occurred, whether the flood was literal or metaphorical, local or universal. The Sumerians believed themselves to live in its shadow. From the same lands that produced the king list came another account, older in concept and refined in detail. The Atrahasis epic, also known as the Atrahasis, represents the oldest known complete narrative of a divinely initiated flood, dating to approximately 1800 before the Common Era. This Akkadian composition preserves a story of cosmic creation, human rebellion against the gods, and divine judgment through water. Unlike the fragmentary references in earlier Sumerian poems, the Atrahasis provides a full account of why the flood came and how one man was saved. The hero Zuisudra, meaning he saw life or long of days, receives a divine warning through dreams. The god Enki, defender of humanity, speaks to him in visions, instructing him to build a great vessel. As the waters rise according to divine command, only Ziusudra and those aboard the boat survive the catastrophe. When the deluge ends, he makes offerings to the gods from the safety of his vessel. Later, even more elaborate versions of this story would appear in the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh, where the flood hero becomes Utnapishtim and receives immortal life as reward for his righteousness. These narratives, recorded in the cuneiform script of ancient clay, represent humanity's earliest attempts to understand and explain a catastrophe so profound that it fundamentally altered their conception of history itself. The flood narratives did not remain confined to Mesopotamia. As knowledge traveled along ancient trade routes, the stories took on new forms, adapted to new lands and new peoples. In Egypt, the flood held different significance entirely. Rather than destruction, the annual inundation of the Nile River was understood as a blessing, a life-giving force that renewed the soil and sustained civilization itself. The waters that rose each year were not seen as divine punishment, but as divine provision. Yet even this vastly different interpretation reveals something profound about human consciousness. Water held sacred significance everywhere. The Greeks preserved their own deluge mythology in the story of Deucalion and Pyrrha. When Zeus decided to destroy corrupt humanity with a worldwide flood, Deucalion received divine guidance, constructing an ark to survive the catastrophe. After the waters receded, he and his wife Pyrrha populated the earth by casting stones over their shoulders, stones that transformed into new people. This narrative, distinct in its details, follows the same essential structure as its Mesopotamian predecessors: divine will, a warning to the righteous, a vessel of salvation, survival, and renewal across the Mediterranean world. Variations on this theme echoed through different mythological traditions. The similarities were too consistent, the structural elements too parallel to be mere coincidence. Something profound about the human experience of catastrophic water was being encoded across cultures. In the great river valleys of Asia, flood narratives took on yet different dimensions while maintaining recognizable patterns. The Hindu traditions of the Indian subcontinent preserved the story of the Matsya avatar, a divine incarnation of Vishnu in the form of a great fish. In texts such as the Satapatha Brahmana and the Puranas, this narrative unfolds with ancient poetry. A cosmic flood rises to destroy the world, and the divine fish appears to warn the righteous king Manu. Vishnu instructs Manu to gather the seeds of all living things and board a sacred vessel. As the waters inundate the world, Manu and his precious cargo survive the deluge. The fish guides the ark to safety, using a rope attached to its horn. When the waters recede, the world is repopulated and renewed. This narrative, like those from Mesopotamia and Greece, carries the same essential elements: catastrophe, divine warning, preservation of life through a vessel, and renewal afterward. Yet the symbolism differs profoundly. Where Mesopotamian texts emphasize divine judgment and human sin, Hindu philosophy emphasizes cosmic cycles of destruction and creation. The flood is not merely punishment, but a natural rhythm of existence, part of the eternal turning of ages. In China, similar yet distinctive traditions emerged. The goddess Nuwa repairs the sky itself after a great flood threatens creation, using molten stones to seal the heavens. These were not isolated stories. They were expressions of how different cultures understood the same phenomenon through their own philosophical and religious frameworks. Beyond the ancient civilizations of Eurasia, flood narratives appeared across the Americas, in Africa, and among indigenous peoples scattered across every continent. These were not the products of cultural diffusion alone, though trade and migration certainly carried stories across distances. Rather, the universality of flood myths suggests something deeper about human settlement patterns and environmental experience. Civilizations arose wherever water was abundant along rivers, near coasts, in fertile valleys where regular flooding replenished the soil. The Mesoamerican Maya recorded in their sacred text, the Popol Vuh, how the gods destroyed imperfect versions of humanity through a great flood before creating the maize-based humans of the current age. The Aztecs maintained similar narratives in their codices, describing how the fifth sun, the current world age, emerged after previous world ages were destroyed by flood. Across Africa, from the Khoisan to the Yoruba peoples, flood traditions were preserved in oral narratives that explained divine judgment and the consequences of moral transgression. In Australia, Aboriginal peoples embedded flood narratives within the Dreamtime creation stories, explaining how the landscape itself was shaped by water. In North America, the Hopi and Ojibwe peoples maintained traditions of a great flood that destroyed a corrupt world, with chosen survivors repopulating the earth afterward. Nowhere on inhabited earth did human memory fail to record the experience of catastrophic water. To understand why flood myths cluster so prominently in certain regions requires understanding the geography of civilization itself. The world's earliest and most advanced ancient societies arose in river valleys vulnerable to periodic catastrophic inundation. Mesopotamia, built upon the unpredictable Tigris and Euphrates rivers, experienced devastating floods regularly throughout its history. The Indus Valley civilization, centered on a river system prone to massive overflows, developed sophisticated responses to periodic inundation, including raised cities and elaborate drainage systems. Egypt, though blessed with the more predictable Nile, still knew the power of water when floods exceeded normal bounds. China's Yellow River, the cradle of Chinese civilization, was so destructive that it became known as China's Sorrow. These were not peaceful regions blessed with gentle streams. They were lands where survival required constant negotiation with water's power. Archaeological excavations reveal the evidence. At Shirupak in Mesopotamia, a layer of yellow alluvial clay deposits separates different periods of occupation, indicating a sudden, catastrophic flood. At Kish, multiple flood deposits appear at different stratigraphic levels, each marking a distinct disaster. At thick sediment layers reveal how dramatically water could transform the landscape. The Indus Valley civilization built cities on raised platforms and created sophisticated systems of canals and drainage, specifically to manage the water that would inevitably return. These were not myths imagined in times of peace. They were narratives born from genuine and repeated experience with devastation. The most dramatic proposal linking myth to geological reality emerged in the late 20th century with the Black Sea deluge hypothesis. Geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman proposed in 1996 that a catastrophic event occurred approximately 8,400 years before the present, around 5600 BCE. According to this hypothesis, the Black Sea was once a vast freshwater lake, isolated from the Mediterranean by a rocky barrier at the Bosphorus Strait. As global sea levels rose following the end of the Ice Age, Mediterranean waters eventually breached this natural dam. What followed, Ryan and Pittman suggested, was a cataclysmic flood of unimaginable scale. Mediterranean salt water poured into the freshwater Black Sea basin, raising the water level by as much as 80 meters and inundating approximately 70,000 square kilometers of coastal land in a matter of days or weeks. Entire settlements were obliterated. Agricultural lands were transformed into inland sea. Populations living around the Black Sea basin were forced to flee in all directions westward, into the Balkans and Europe, northward into the steppes, southward toward Mesopotamia and the Levant. These displaced peoples, the hypothesis proposed, carried with them not only their refugee status, but also the traumatic memory of the flood that had consumed their homeland. As they migrated, they carried this memory embedded in their myths and stories, spreading it across the ancient world. Could this single, catastrophic event explain the universal presence of flood narratives across human cultures? Could it be that all the world's flood myths ultimately trace back to the Black Sea deluge? The Black Sea hypothesis was compelling and had captured public imagination because it offered a literal geological explanation for what had seemed forever mythological. Here was a tangible catastrophe that might have actually occurred, leaving both geological evidence and cultural memory in its wake. Ryan and Pittman argued that the displaced populations from the Black Sea deluge became the dispersal vector for Indo-European languages and agricultural practices. Archaeological evidence seemed to support the idea that farming spread from the Near East across Europe with remarkable speed within a few millennia. Agricultural societies had extended from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic to the steppes, and far into Europe. If the Black Sea flood had forced Neolithic populations to migrate, carrying both their tools and their stories, this would explain both the archaeological record and the mythological similarities. However, subsequent research has complicated this picture considerably. Revised calculations suggest the water level rise may have been closer to 30 meters rather than 80, and the inundated area closer to 2,000 square kilometers rather than 70,000. More critically, archaeological investigations have failed to identify widespread destruction layers in the region that would correspond to the proposed timeframe. There is no clear evidence of catastrophic abandonment of settlements around the Black Sea at the hypothesized date. The connection that once seemed certain became increasingly uncertain as more evidence accumulated. Science, in its patient, methodical way, was forcing a reckoning with what could actually be demonstrated versus what remained speculation. Beyond the Black Sea, the geological record revealed numerous other catastrophic flooding events that occurred during the period when human civilizations were developing. The Missoula floods, a series of cataclysmic glacial lake outburst events, swept across the Pacific Northwest between 15,000 and 13,000 years ago. When ice dams holding glacial Lake Missoula failed, torrents of water carved massive canyons and created the channeled scablands of Washington, evidence of devastation so immense that early geologists refused to believe it had actually occurred. The draining of glacial Lake Agassiz, a vast preglacial lake covering much of North America, released catastrophic volumes of meltwater at multiple intervals, with major events documented at 13,000 years ago, 8,200 years ago, and 7,600 years ago. These floods poured into the Arctic Ocean and Hudson Bay, disrupting the thermohaline circulation of the Atlantic. In Iceland, volcanic subglacial eruptions beneath Vatnajökull Glacier trigger Jökulsá glacial outburst floods that remain among the most devastating floods on modern Earth. These geological processes were not relics of deep time. They were recent events in the scale of human civilization, occurring when human populations were already developing the consciousness to remember and record catastrophes. The question becomes not whether great floods occurred, but whether specific ancient flood myths preserve memories of specific geological events. The evidence suggests complexity rather than simple correspondence. The search for connections between ancient myth and geological reality reveals a profound truth about human consciousness. We are creatures who seek to understand catastrophe through narrative. Whether a flood myth preserves a memory of a specific historical event or expresses a universal human experience of vulnerability before natural forces, it speaks to something essential about the human condition. Flood myths cluster geographically in precisely those regions where civilizations developed: river valleys, coastal areas, and regions prone to regular or catastrophic inundation. This is not coincidence. Civilizations arose where water was abundant, and where water was abundant, it could also devastate. The regularity of these myths, the similarity of their structures across vastly separated cultures, may not reflect a single global catastrophe, but rather a universal human response to living with the knowledge that water, the source of life, could also become the instrument of destruction. The voices of ancient peoples echo across millennia through their myths. They speak of a primordial catastrophe, a moment when the old world was swept away and a new world emerged. Whether they are recounting geological events or expressing metaphorical truths about transformation and renewal, they are telling us something essential about themselves and about the human experience. In the gentle darkness, listening to these ancient voices, one understands that the flood myths were never meant to be solved like puzzles. They were meant to be contemplated, to be carried in memory like the seeds the heroes carried aboard their vessels' precious inheritances, passed from one generation to the next, preserving something ineffable and deeply true. Chapter 6. The Unanswered Question. What remains hidden? The story of civilization begins not with certainty, but with questions that reach backward through thousands of years of darkness. What we know of early human societies rests upon fragments, pottery shards, stone foundations, scattered bones, and marks upon clay tablets. Yet for every answer archaeologists uncover, new mysteries emerge from the earth. The definition of what we call civilization itself shapes how we understand our past. Across multiple academic disciplines, from archaeology to anthropology to history, scholars have developed careful technical definitions that distinguish civilizations from simpler societies. These definitions are not value judgments about superiority, but rather precise tools for understanding how human societies organize themselves. A civilization requires specific elements: dense urban settlements, monumental architecture, state-level government, writing systems, and specialized labor. Yet even this seemingly straightforward framework conceals deeper questions. How do we decide which societies deserve the label of civilization? What about communities that built magnificently without writing? What about peoples who organized massive cooperative efforts without formal hierarchies? The very act of defining civilization shapes which stories get told and which remain hidden in the shadows of time. Sumer stands in the historical record as perhaps the first civilization, with evidence so compelling that scholars for generations accepted it without question. The archaeological remains speak clearly. Dense cities rose along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, massive ziggurats commanded the skylines, and irrigation canals transformed the landscape. By approximately 3500 BCE, the Sumerians had developed cuneiform script, humanity's earliest known writing system. Yet even this seemingly definitive claim has generated scholarly disagreement. Some researchers propose that pre-Sumerian peoples, the Puebloans, who preceded Sumerian arrival, established the foundational technologies of civilization. These earlier inhabitants drained marshes, built irrigation systems, and pioneered metalwork and pottery. Others suggest that writing itself should not be the determining factor in civilization's emergence. Groundbreaking discoveries at sites like Göbekli Tepe, predating Sumerian civilization by over 5,000 years, reveal that human societies possessed the capacity for monumental construction and complex organization long before the invention of writing. This realization has transformed scholarly understanding. Civilization did not begin in one place with one people, but emerged across multiple regions through varied pathways. To understand what is hidden, one must first understand how we see. Contemporary archaeology has been transformed by technologies that would have seemed like magic only decades ago. Light detection and ranging LiDAR functions as a kind of X-ray vision for the Earth itself, using laser pulses to penetrate dense forests and reveal structures hidden beneath centuries of vegetation. In Mesoamerica, LiDAR has unveiled nearly 500 previously unknown Maya and Olmec sites, fundamentally altering our understanding of pre-Columbian civilization. Similar revelations emerged in the Amazon basin and Southeast Asia, where ancient cities, road networks, and agricultural systems materialized through the technological veil. Ground-penetrating radar peers beneath the surface like a CT scan, revealing subsurface features without disturbing the soil. Artificial intelligence now analyzes vast data sets of remote sensing imagery, automatically detecting archaeological signatures that human eyes might miss. Drones equipped with multispectral cameras capture detailed aerial data in hours that once required years of landscape surveying. These technologies represent a quiet revolution in how humanity recovers its past. They demonstrate that millions of untouched archaeological sites likely remain undiscovered worldwide, with perhaps 90% of the prehistoric archaeological record still hidden in the earth. Deep in the earth of southeastern Turkey, standing upon a hill known as Potbelly Hill, rises a mystery that challenges everything previously believed about civilization's origins. Göbekli Tepe contains massive T-shaped stone pillars arranged in circular patterns, some towers reaching more than 16 feet in height. These structures were constructed between 10,000 and 8,000 years before the present, more than 5,000 years before the rise of Sumer. Yet the most remarkable aspect is not the monuments themselves, but what they reveal about the people who built them. The evidence suggests that these monuments were created by hunter-gatherer peoples who had not yet adopted agriculture or permanent settlement. They gathered seasonally, coordinated massive communal labor, and engaged in elaborate religious rituals. Sometime around 9,000 years ago, the site was intentionally buried, its purpose concluded. Göbekli Tepe stands as proof that sophisticated human organization, monumental construction, and complex religious beliefs emerged before the traditionally accepted timeline of civilization. The discovery forced scholars to reconsider fundamental assumptions. Perhaps agriculture was not a prerequisite for complexity, but rather emerged from the organizational structures and communal gathering practices that ceremonial centers like Göbekli Tepe had fostered. Across the Mediterranean world, other ancient cities rose and flourished thousands of years before Sumerian civilization reached its zenith. In the Jordan Valley, Jericho emerged as a settled city around 9600 BCE, making it among the oldest established cities known to archaeology. By 6800 BCE, massive stone fortifications enclosed the settlement, demonstrating sophisticated urban planning and communal defense organization. These walls suggest organized labor, engineering knowledge, and centralized decision-making. Farther west, Çatalhöyük in southern Anatolia flourished around 7000 BCE as a proto-city of extraordinary character. Over 18 levels of continuous occupation reveal a densely packed settlement where houses clustered back-to-back, accessible only through rooftops. The archaeological record shows remarkable artistic expression through wall paintings, reliefs, and sculptures. Extraordinarily, the evidence suggests relatively egalitarian social structure, with no distinctive elite residences and relatively equal status between men and women. These pre-Sumerian sites demonstrate that civilization emerged through diverse pathways: agricultural settlement, monumental construction, organized labor, symbolic expression, and complex social organization, all developed in multiple regions independently thousands of years before writing was invented. The emerging consensus among contemporary scholars recognizes what earlier generations did not. Civilization arose through multiple independent origins, rather than spreading from a single source. 6 primary cradles of civilization are now identified: Mesopotamia, the Nile Valley, South Asia's Indo-Gangetic Plain, the North China Plain, the Andean coast, and Mesoamerica. Each developed sophisticated urban centers, writing systems, monumental architecture, and state organization along distinct timelines and through different mechanisms. This understanding represents a fundamental shift from the diffusionist model that dominated early 20th century archaeology, which assumed civilization originated in the Fertile Crescent and spread outward to less advanced peoples. Modern archaeology, informed by genetic analysis and refined dating techniques, reveals instead a world of diverse human societies encountering environmental challenges and opportunities in varied ways. Some paths led through agricultural intensification. Others emerged from fishing and gathering economies. Some societies developed writing systems. Others achieved remarkable complexity through alternative knowledge preservation mechanisms. The recognition of multiple civilizational origins does not diminish any single achievement, but rather expands our appreciation for human ingenuity. It demonstrates that the capacity for sophisticated social organization, creative problem-solving, and cultural expression was not unique to any single people or region, but rather a fundamental human capability. Yet the question of what defines civilization remains more complex than simple lists of characteristics. Different academic disciplines, archaeology, anthropology, history emphasize different aspects. Archaeologists focus on material remains, cities, monuments, pottery, tools, and evidence of state organization preserved in the earth. Anthropologists examine social structures, hierarchy, specialized roles, institutional authority, and the mechanisms that coordinate large populations. Historians emphasize documentary evidence, written records, codes of law, and institutional continuity. All approaches share common ground, defining civilizations not as inherently superior societies, but as complex human organizations with specific observable features. This technical, value-neutral definition represents an important scholarly evolution. Earlier generations of historians treated civilization as a measure of cultural superiority, implicitly ranking societies hierarchically with Western European societies at the apex. Modern scholars across all disciplines recognize that civilization encompasses both achievements and costs, technological innovation and warfare, artistic expression and epidemic disease, institutional creativity and systematic oppression. This more nuanced understanding allows historians to appreciate ancient civilizations on their own terms, recognizing their remarkable accomplishments while acknowledging the inequalities, violence, and suffering that also characterize them. The role of writing in defining and understanding civilization deserves particular reflection, for it represents both a remarkable achievement and a potential source of interpretive bias. Writing emerged around 35 current BCE in Sumeria, appearing independently in Egypt, China, and Mesoamerica at different times. It functioned as a revolutionary technology, similar in significance to DNA in biology, because it allowed knowledge to persist independent of individual carriers. Written records could preserve legal codes, religious teachings, administrative records, and cultural narratives across generations without reliance on oral transmission or individual memory. This durable infrastructure of knowledge fundamentally changed how complex societies could organize themselves. Yet emphasizing writing as a defining criterion for civilization creates a potential distortion. It privileges literate societies while marginalizing equally complex cultures that organize themselves through alternative mechanisms. Quipu-knotted cord records used by Andean peoples functioned as a sophisticated record-keeping system, despite lacking alphabetic writing. Oral traditions maintained by specialized memory keepers in many African, Pacific, and indigenous societies preserved complex legal systems, genealogies, and histories with remarkable accuracy across centuries. The emphasis on writing reflects partly genuine historical significance and partly the bias of historians who work primarily with written documents. Recognizing this bias allows for more complete understanding of how diverse human societies achieved and maintained complexity. Yet preoccupation with writing may have obscured equally significant achievements of pre-literate societies. Archaeological evidence from Stonehenge, Mississippi mound complexes and early Andean highland cultures reveals societies that coordinated massive labor efforts without written records. Stonehenge's blue stones were transported from Wales over 150 miles away, requiring sophisticated logistics and long-distance social networks. Mississippi mound complexes like Cahokia suggest populations numbering in the tens of thousands organized around ceremonial centers. Early Andean cultures built monumental stone structures and maintained extensive trade networks without written language. These societies developed institutional structures, stored knowledge through alternative means, and achieved considerable complexity. Modern assumptions about civilization may inadvertently underestimate pre-literate societies' capacities. Historical narratives often portray hunter-gatherer societies as uniformly egalitarian and lacking complexity, yet anthropological evidence shows extraordinary diversity in social organization. Some hunter-gatherer societies developed significant stratification based on accumulated wealth or control of resources. Others maintained genuinely egalitarian structures despite large scale. The assumption that linear progression inevitably moved societies from simple to complex, from oral to literate, obscures the reality. Human societies have experimented with countless organizational forms, some of which later civilizations largely abandoned. The hidden depths of human history extend beyond what archaeologists have uncovered. Modern estimates suggest approximately 90% of the prehistoric archaeological record remains undiscovered, with potentially millions of untouched sites worldwide. This astonishing figure transforms how we should approach historical knowledge. What we know is merely the tip of an iceberg. Archaeological practice itself acknowledges this reality. Modern excavation methodology deliberately preserves portions of sites for future investigation, recognizing that techniques available to future generations will surpass current capabilities. Early 20th century excavators discarded charcoal and animal bones, now recognized as invaluable for radiocarbon dating and dietary analysis. Archaeologists intentionally leave witness areas unexcavated within larger dig sites, maintaining pristine stratigraphic records for verification and future study. This respectful approach to the archaeological record reflects humility about the limits of current knowledge. Current excavations at major sites, Lagash in Mesopotamia, Tikal in Guatemala, Rokigahi in India's Indus Valley, and submerged sites like Heraklion in Egypt continue revealing unexpected findings that reshape understanding. Each discovery suggests how much remains concealed. The archaeological record is not merely a source of facts to be extracted, but a profound archive of human experience requiring patient, respectful, and careful stewardship. As we rest now, knowing that history stretches backward into mystery and forward into possibility, we recognize that the story of civilization remains unfinished, waiting in the earth and in the depths of time for those patient enough to listen and seek. The fundamental questions persist. How did human societies first organize themselves at scale? What drives the emergence of cities, hierarchies, and state institutions? Why do some communities develop writing while others achieve remarkable complexity through alternative systems? Were the origins of civilization singular or multiple? Did complex societies arise inevitably from agricultural surplus, or through varied pathways responding to different environments and cultural innovations? These questions cannot yet be fully answered, but their persistence invites humility. The civilizations that rose thousands of years ago, Sumerian and Egyptian, Indus and Chinese, Mesoamerican and Andean, remain partially opaque to modern understanding. Their peoples had inner lives, beliefs, contradictions, and experiences that no artifact can fully convey. The fragments we recover, pottery, Walls, bones, and marks upon clay represent only traces of vastly more complex human realities. As we drift into the gentle landscape between waking and sleep, we carry with us the knowledge that the past is not a fixed repository of facts, but an ongoing conversation between present and deep time, continuously reshaped as new discoveries emerge and new interpretations illuminate the eternal mystery of how human civilization came to be.